Hello, my name is Draycott and I work on the BA Honours Fashion Studies programme at Derby University. And today I'd like to give you a demonstration on how to set up a bodice draft using half-scale blocks. What I'm using today is 2 half-scale blocks, a front and a back, and an A3 piece of paper. The first thing that I would actually do is I'd place my blocks on the paper so that I can actually see if I've got enough room all the way around. Then I'd get a pencil, I'd make a mark on my paper here where this line is coming across, like so. Take my blocks away and using my pattern master, I'd place this on the paper, running horizontal to the paper and draw a nice horizontal line across my sheet like that. Then the next process is to take your cardboard blocks and place them accurately on this line. And the reason why you do this is so that your centre front of the front is actually sat at 90 degrees to this horizontal line. And this is really important when you're pattern cutting, because eventually we're going to make pattern pieces from this, and these will then be placed onto a piece of fabric. So this is accurate right down the line, ready for when we're actually cutting out fabric. If we don't do this process and we go off kilt like that, our patterns will end up hanging funny on our garments and our clothing will look very strange and very odd. So that's the reason why we're doing this. So you place your block like so, and then you draw nice and steadily around your cardboard block like so, making sure that you add in all of your notches. Make sure that when you come to the corners here that you do actually get a true corner. Working round. It's really important that these underarm points are sat on the horizontal line. Adding the notch at the armhole, up to the shoulder point. And then this is a dart, so down to the apex, back upon yourself, back to the shoulder, and then around the neckline. Then you can actually remove it. You can quite easily see that we've actually got the front there, the outline, and then just draw in the dart legs from the apex down to the hem down there. And there you can see we actually have our front traced off. Do the same process for the back, drawing all the way around, but I've actually got one that I've already made earlier. This is an example to show you what it should look like. So it's really important that you place these points on the line like so for the centre front. The underarm points must be touching for the front and the back, and then this point also must be sat on the horizontal line. The reason why we have to sit these 2 points on top of each other like so is if we want to measure the armhole side, we can do it in one fell swoop. If there's actually a gap between the cardboard blocks, then you can't do that. You'd have to get your tape measure, move it along and add it along. Now the reason why you set your front and your back up like this is because these are your side seams, and if you decided later on that you actually wanted to alter the side seam here, you would automatically then alter the same measurement here. It just means that you never forget any alterations, because ultimately this 2D draft will then turn into patterns, which will then turn into a 3D garment. Another example that I'd like to show you is, again, you can see it's a half scale block. Just to go through that, this is your shoulder. You know, if you add this shoulder to this shoulder measurement from here to here, here to here, if you add them together, then they will measure the same amount as the back shoulder. This is your centre front and this is your waist. So if you add your waist here and here, add those together, and then these to here, this will equate to half of a garment. So you've got your centre front and your centre back there. Other things to remember that you should check when you pick up somebody's block, always make sure that you check the measurements of the block. Don't rely on somebody else's block. It's up to you to check. So your dart legs, they are going to be sewn together, and a dart is something that will actually give your 2D pattern a 3D shape for the bust, so they must be the same length. And these here at the waist must be the same, and also these ones here at the back. Another thing that you must always consider is the fact that this is your centre front, so this is the neck point. So what you must make sure you do is this must come along and be exaggerated and extended along in a horizontal line, and this must be a 90-degree angle. So if I place my pattern master on so like that, you can see that's a continuation on. And the reason why is if we want to make a garment that is cut on the fold, so therefore there's no seam down the centre front, if you didn't have this horizontal line here, you'd end up with a little lip when you folded and mirrored the garment, and it would look very, very messy and inaccurate. So it has to be the same here at the hem and on the centre back here, and the same on the back neck. So they're things that you need to make sure that you are aware of. So just going back to the basic setup. So another thing that you must consider when you're actually setting up your draft is you need to apply the correct information, and actually it was easier to see on this document here. So the important information that you must put on every draft is you must have the centre front, you must have SOG written on the centre front line. That means straight of grain. And this will come into play later on when we're putting this pattern piece, which will be later on, onto fabric. Centre back must always appear on your drafts, and again straight of grain. These are arrowheads, but obviously there's only half of them visualised here because we've only got half of the front and half of the back. So they're really important bits of information that you need to add to your draft. Once you've set up your draft, and I'm going to show a demonstration just on this single A4 piece of paper, because we are going to make a bodice, what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you the bodice. So I've got a little half scale toile here. This is the little half scale toile that we are going to produce in the end. So you can see that it's got two sleeves, which are straight sleeves. We have the front. The fronts are actually different because the exercise itself is going to show you how to create two different types of dart. We have a patch pocket. We have buttons with fastening down the front. That's going to be the fastening the buttons. And then on this particular side with the patch pocket, I'm going to show you how to create an underarm dart, which is this one here. And on this particular one, I'm going to show you how to create a waist dart. Just to show you what the actual garment is like on the back, so then it gives you a really good visual. We've got a back here. As you can see, it's a complete back. It has been cut on the fold, which is what I was trying to explain earlier. So it's one piece. We've got two waist darts, and this here is a back yoke. So that's what we're actually going to produce. So that's your visual. So what you would be expected to do in industry is this. Now, this is a working drawing sheet, and a working drawing is a black and white flat line drawing done with a ruler and pen, and it's proportional, and it's to show people within the industry, when you pass them your drafts and your patterns, what it is you're trying to recreate. So as you can see the waist dart that we're creating, the buttons, the patch pocket, the underarm dart, the two sleeves, the curved neck, and then the back you can see the yoke with the waist darts. So we would expect everybody, after they've set the draft up, to create a working drawing like this to explain exactly what it is that they're actually going to produce. And these little dots and dashes means that these pieces are separate pieces that are sewn together, and then the larger stitches mean that it's a top stitch. It's a bit of a detail to actually, embellish the garment. So that's a working drawing sheet. And what we would expect you to use is a template like this that you could place under your paper, use it as a guide, place it under your paper, and then you can create your drawing from your template. We wouldn't expect you to draw on top of your sheet like I have here, but it clearly shows you how I created this. So that's what I've done before I actually got to this stage. So just because this is a little bit of a stage further on and we've got a button stand, I showed you in the garment there that actually we are going to have buttons down the front. So this is the block that we started off with, and now I'd like to show you how to create the button stand. Now we're working half scale, so all my measurements are in half scale. So I've measured my buttons and I've decided that actually what I'd like to do is add 8mm button stand. So in total that would be 1.6 centimetres width of a button stand. So I'm using my pattern master, and this is like the central point, this is the 0 point. You place that on your centre front like that, and then you measure across 0.8. Do that the same at the top, near the neckline, and then down at the waist. Like so. And then just join those together, taking your time. One thing I've not mentioned is when you are pattern cutting, you must use pencils that are HB or H. You mustn't use soft pencils because soft pencils actually smudge, and it's all about having a really nice crisp clear line. So using my pattern master again to get a really nice horizontal at the neckline like I mentioned before, and do the same at the hem. Always put in your pattern master on the centre front line, and there we go. So I now know that is 8mm across, and we've extended the centre front line. So always, by the way, put your measurements on your drafts, just so that if you ever measure anything you don't want to be measuring it again, and it's going to save you time. So that is actually adding on my button stand. So that's the first thing. Now what I'd like to show you is another terminology sheet, because it will clarify the process of what we're going to do. So this is a sheet that I asked my students to complete. I think it's really important that students should understand where body measurements come from, and I think that's very important. But most importantly, if you look at this here, you can see that these are working drawings, and what they're showing is they're showing different placements of darts around the body. And basically the rule is if you actually have a dart that actually goes to underneath the armhole, then this is an underarm dart. This dart goes into the shoulder, so therefore it's a shoulder dart. That's an armhole dart, etc, etc. And you can see on these particular working drawings we only have one dart on one side. If you look at these ones, these have one dart, but they're actually going into the centre front. We've got 3 darts on this one, 2 darts here, and then we've got 2 darts going into shoulder on this one. So it's really kind of complex, but the first thing you must do is you always look at your working drawing, and then you work out what it is that you're trying to produce. So with that in mind, what I'd like you to do is again refer back to your working drawing, and then look at the block you're starting off with. Now the rule of thumb with darts is, at the moment I have 2 darts here. If you look at my drawing here, I actually only want 1 dart. There isn't one in the shoulder at all. There's just one here at the waist. So what I have to do is eliminate this dart and put it into the waist. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. So using your block, placing that here like so, and then this is the rule. This dart and this dart are the same. The only reason why this dart is actually in card and it's still looking black is if I cut this out, the 2 bits would separate. So it is still an open dart like that one is. And the rule is if you actually decide to eliminate or close a dart, it has to open up somewhere else. You can't just lose it. So another thing I need to mention is this is our centre front, and I mentioned earlier on, this is very important that this goes, well, it doesn't alter, it doesn't move or change, because this is what will actually you use to place on fabric later on. And so therefore it's very important that your blocks and your patterns don't go off grain. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this dart. So what I'd like you to do is think, right, okay, I want to close this dart. So I'd like you to put an arrow on your draft so we know which direction we're going to close the dart in. You put your pencil on the apex, and then you close your dart like so. Now if you look here, you can see now that here, just here, and mark with a dashed line so you can see the rotation, from there to there, that is the shoulder. It's the same measurement as it was here to here, but it's without the dart. So I've closed the dart, and then the rule is from the closed dart, working away from the centre front, because I'm not altering the centre front, trace around your cardboard block, making sure that you add your notch, using a dash line because in a little while you'll see how quite confusing it can get. Make sure that your corners don't look like that. They really should look like that. You need that point there. Work around your cardboard block till you get to the waist. Make sure you get your nice corner. Taking your time, and then all you do is you go to the first dart leg. Because I'm closing this dart up here, I'm actually putting the rest of the dart down here, so I'm going to make this one twice as wide. So I've just gone to the first dart leg. If you move your cardboard block away, and again get your pattern master back to the apex, making sure you don't actually move, draw in, there you go, your new dart leg. And actually what we've done now is we're not using that dart leg anymore. That dart has been closed, and your new shape is now from the shoulder around here. That's your new underarm position. You can see it's moved up because we've closed the dart. That's your side seam, so that is still the same length as that. Nothing's altered there. This is your waist, this is your new dart leg, and then this is back to the centre front. So now all of that is your new dart, and that one's eliminated. In the last section I showed you how to close the shoulder dart and create the waist dart. And looking back at our working drawing that I mentioned earlier, now what we're going to do is we're going to move the waist dart, because actually on this side of the garment, just purely for an exercise purpose, we want to create an underarm dart like this here. So this is the exercise that we did earlier, and here we had the shoulder dart, which we closed. We sat this leg onto this leg here, traced all the way around, and you can see that this is where the new dart has appeared. Now this rule of creating the underarm dart can happen anywhere around the body. I've just decided that I want to create an underarm dart. So as a design detail, I've decided to measure from the underarm position, and you can see why it's so important now, why I have to have my marks like this and not the gap, because otherwise you wouldn't know where to measure from. So from this point here, I'm just going to measure down 5 centimetres. So I haven't actually got a line there, so I'm going to make sure I put one on. There you go. So I've made a little mark there. So what I'm going to do now is create a style line. So this is where the new underarm dart is going to appear. So from the measurement, you draw the line up to the apex, like so. And then underarm style line, and actually draw that onto your draft so you know that that's what you're actually wanting to do. And just to explain what a draft is meant to show all your thoughts and processes and techniques, so that when somebody looks at your work, or somebody needs to work from your draft, they can see the processes that you've gone through, where you started off and where you've ended up. Excuse me. So I've drawn my style line down like so, and then the next bit is actually, this is my dart leg here, and this is my new waist dart. So the next thing is you actually get a piece of paper, and what you do is you trace off this little bit here, and it's called a pattern adaptation, and it's a really easy way to move darts around. So you trace off from your where you want your dart to be, down the side seams to the dart leg that you have open, and you get a little piece of pattern cutting paper, lay it over the top of your draft like so, and then you would trace off. Once you've traced that off, you end up with a pattern adaptation like this. And what I would advise you do at this stage, obviously you cut the paper out, I would make sure that you actually write on your pattern adaptation. So this one's a waist dart, that's my underarm line, it's my side seam, because if somebody talks to you and you know, you look away from your work and it moves, because it's quite an irregular shape, you might think, well, where does it actually go? And it's very easy now to place that back onto my draft, so I can see what I'm doing and place it back on there in an accurate position. So at the moment, this dart is closed, this dart is open, and I want my dart to be here and no longer here. So the rule is, again, we're never going to move the centre front line because that's not going to come off grain. So we close the dart leg like so, and then trace around, being very, very careful not to move it. Trace around your pattern adaptation, making sure you get your corner in there. Again, using a little dash line so you can see your new movement. And I've just moved it, so just be very careful. Do my waist, like so. Now I've got a little bit of an anomaly coming there, so I'll sort that out in a minute. And then I'm actually going to use my pattern master because I know this is a straight line, and use my pattern master to get a nice straight line there. So I had an anomaly here, so I would get my pattern master like so and just curve that off nicely. And then my new dart, that one is now closed, so I'm going to give it a nice cross out like so. You never rub anything out on drafts, you always keep the information on there so we can retrace the steps you've gone to. And now this and this is the new underarm dart. So your new pattern piece goes from here, round, shoulder, the armhole, underarm point, dart leg, apex, dart leg, back down the side seam, and there's your waist. And that is how you move one dart into another dart.